Howdy, Rob Lee here, and I hope you're enjoying The Truth in This Art. It gives me great satisfaction to share stories about arts and culture, especially here in Baltimore. I wanted to tap in real quick to introduce a series of episodes dropping every Wednesday in June and July. Located in the heart of Baltimore, Station North was the first area in Baltimore to receive the state designation as an arts and entertainment district back in 2002. Spanning the neighborhoods of Charles North, Greenmount West, and Barclay, the Station North Arts District is a diverse collection of artists' live-work studios, galleries, gardens, graffiti, theaters, makerspaces, arts nonprofits, row homes, restaurants, and creative small businesses. It is driven by a vibrant, multidisciplinary, and evolving creative community that works to harness resources to preserve and enhance bold artistic projects and act as a coordinator, connector, and promoter for creatives hoping to grow and build community in Station North. With this podcast, Station North is celebrating its 20th anniversary and its redesignation as an arts district. We're so excited to spotlight a sample of district-based artists to share more about their work, future projects, and how they make Station North a creative hub. Station North Arts District is now a proud program of the Central Baltimore Partnership. And now a quick message from this month's presenting sponsor, the Station North Arts District. Happy Pride Week. Baltimore Pride 2020 hashtag Together Again is presented by the Pride Center of Maryland. In Station North, check out the free Pride Film Festival at the SNF Parkway Theater, including Baltimore Living Archives, Pride Elder Edition tonight. Wednesday, June 22nd, the 47th Baltimore Pride Block Party will feature over 100 vendors and stages at the Why Not Lot and Charles and 23rd with headliners Trina, Kiki Wyatt, and more. Station North Arts District is a proud program of the Central Baltimore Partnership. Welcome to The Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee. And today's guests are the director and the studio and program manager, as well as instructor for the Baltimore Jewelry Center. Please welcome Shane Prada and Elliot Keely. Welcome to the podcast.
We're good.
Good. How are you doing today, Rob?
I'm middling. I'm doing all right.
Monday.
Yes, it's after a long weekend of just kind of, it's one of those things when you don't have your normal setup over the weekend. You kind of do what you normally would do, and this past weekend was a departure from that. I was doing a little bit too much. I was like, oh, I have free time now to do some chores around the house. I'm gonna buy blinds. I'm gonna paint a little bit. And then it's just like I slept like a crazy person all Sunday. And it's like, maybe less next time. So thank you both for coming onto the podcast. And I want to start off, for those who are undipped and unfamiliar, could you both give us your vital stats? That's the background, and share what the mission about the Baltimore Jewelry Center is.
I'll start that. So I'm Shane, the director at the BJC. So we founded the Baltimore Jewelry Center in 2013 and opened our doors in 2014. So we're coming up on 8 years in business. We are a nonprofit, independent school for metalsmithing and jewelry. That's basically the best way to describe what we do. Mica, the Maryland Institute College of Art, had a continuing studies program in art, jewelry, and metalsmithing. It had about a 22-year history. That program came to a close, and that's when we started the nonprofit. So we had a predecessor, which is a great way to start a nonprofit. Our main goal is just to provide low-cost, accessible education in metalsmithing and jewelry to Baltimore and beyond. We have opportunities for everyone from brand new artists or students who've never taken a class like those we offer to people who've been practicing jewelry making and metalsmithing for decades. We have classes, workshops, studio access. We also have a residency program and a kids and teens program and a workforce development program. And we have a gallery with an exhibition space. We serve about 500 students a year and about 150 independent artists through our rental. And we host about 10 resident artists a year for some more stats. Elliot, do you want to chime in? Maybe something about our square footage or our space?
We have about just a little over 3,000 square feet of studio space, and the majority of that is devoted to classroom space. So when we have a person come in off the street and they say, "What do you do?" My answer is usually the simplest answer is that we're a jewelry school. Because sometimes people think that we're like a retail space, that we're something else that we're not. Well, and while we do have retail, mainly what we do, and mainly the reason people come into our space is to learn how to make jewelry. And that's kind of what my draw was to the BJC. I had heard about it as a space. I was familiar with the co-founder, April Wood, who's a longtime Baltimorean, along with Shane. They founded the BJC, and I moved here for the job. So my role is to support all of those programs that Shane just mentioned and make sure that the studio's running and stuff.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it looks like you two are the people to talk to as I dive into having more jewelry on my fingers. People make fun of me. I start going to exhibition openings, and my brother is like, every time I see you have a new ring on, what's happening? Like, what are you transitioning into? What person are you becoming? Thanos? What's happening here? So, yeah, but that's really great. And education is a big thing. It's like these skills that people don't commonly have. And at least I know I have the question, how does this get made? Where does this come from? It's not like we just have jewelry suddenly, poof, it's there. You know, it has to have someone that's a metalsmither, someone that's working with these different skills to bring something together. So it's good to be able to have this conversation. So what inspired the jewelry nonprofit? And I think I got part of it with it followed what was there at Mica, but what inspired it? What inspired that kind of focus to say, you know what, I want to work with this moving forward. This is where my energy is at.
Yeah. So as we mentioned, there was a predecessor for the BJC, the Mica Jewelry Program, and there was a really rich, diverse community of artists and students who were involved in that program who wanted to continue. So there was a big a level of a community support that was quite large, which is a wonderful way to start an organization. But also it was coming at a time when Mica and other local colleges, the Towson and the Corcoran, were closing programs that were similar. So there was definitely a vacuum and a need for programs like this. And then across the country, you've just seen over the past decade and a half, a lot of craft-focused programs are closing their doors. And along with that, art schools are just increasingly expensive. There just aren't many places where people can go and learn a new artistic or craft skill at a cost that is approachable. So it was really important to us to provide what we call an alternative to the university for people who want to learn and just dip their toes in, and also provide really accessible opportunities for emerging and like mid-career artists.
Thank you. That's, again, it just sounds like interesting. It feels like you're motivating me. You're giving me the interest to say, I need to go take a class. I need to take a workshop. I need to be able to, as I'm going to start gifting people like jewelry I make. That I feel like that's a thing. I feel like that's a thing I'm going to start doing.
Totally.
So what was the draw to jewelry as a whole? Like, and what made you want to provide jewelry making opportunities for others? Because like I said, this is the first conversation I've had where someone's like, "Oh, I make jewelry."
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think people are more. It's a little more common to hear maybe about like ceramics or woodworking or more artistic disciplines like painting and drawing, and jewelry. Jewelry definitely exists in a world of like retail and of glitz and glamour and something that you think of as expensive. And I think Elliot and I have very different approaches to this. I didn't come to art until I was an adult, until about 30, and I came to jewelry making through that Mica program.
Sure.
And just found it really compelling and quite frankly transformative. I'd never thought that I wanted to make things with my hands until I found it. So for me, it was just a really marvelous educational experience, and I was working in education and doing a lot of kind of craft work with kids, so it just seemed like a natural departure. And in general, I think, jewelry is pretty ubiquitous, whether it's just a beaded bracelet or an heirloom piece of jewelry, most people own at least a couple of things, and most of those pieces have some sort of narrative tied to them. So it can be just a really compelling object to carry through one's life.
So next one's for you, Elliot. This is one I'm going to throw out there. So I read that exploring different processes, often incorporating ceramics, drawing, painting, and collage work into your work, while maintaining and specializing the practice in metal is integral to your work. It's really a summation from what I read of what you're doing. Tell me about those different artistic crafts used in your work. Like, is there something you may borrow from ceramics in terms of technique that you're applying to metalsmithing? Speak on that a bit.
I think my training, I come from like a craft focused program. I went to Appalachian State University in North Carolina, which there's a long tradition of craft disciplines in that area, especially textiles, ceramics, and blacksmithing. Those are big in that area, but they all really exist in that region. After leaving school, I was interested in pursuing something further in art and craft. And I had already kind of tapped into a place called Penland School of Craft, which is a wonderful, it's like a workshop-based program. They have a residency, they have a work exchange program, and I participated in a 2-year fellowship called the Core Fellowship Program. So I was really, while I was there, I was really able to like learn lots of different craft media, because they offer studios and workshops in woodworking, ceramics, textiles, jewelry, blacksmithing, all of it. I mean, there's more that I didn't name. So that my background in craft informs my practice in ways that I like to be versatile in what I make. And it's not always a technique applied in a different material, but it's almost always a formal concern or an approach to assemblage,
sure.
Or like a completion of a piece that I'm interested in. And it's also the surfaces and the textures that I find are like commonalities. Since I've been at the Baltimore Jewelry Center for 3 years now, and entering this job, I knew this would kind of happen. I knew that those other things would take more of a backseat. Those other practices would take more of a backseat because I was being more involved and more steeped in jewelry and metalwork. So now my practice is even more so focused on metalwork. I still draw. I keep a sketchbook, and I have a painting studio at home. But ceramics, not as much, although I still, I still refer to some of those forms in my work. But it's become like the more that I learn and share and teach about jewelry, those are the things that that I think about most often.
Thank you for sharing that. I think versatility is a big thing where I do this podcast, and this was something that I've only done for the last like 3 years, like interviewing people and trying to navigate through questions and trying to sound interesting. And before that, it was just me kind of like shooting the breeze with buddies and talking about like the latest in news. So it's like I have that skill set there where I can hold a conversation and do research and build things out. But this is like a different skill set to be able to have a conversation and even moderate conversations. So it's something that kind of serves the other thing a little bit. It's like, oh, okay, let me really think about the performance component of this, or let me really think about it being, to a degree, contrived. Another podcaster I spoke to recently pointed that out to me. He's like, all of this is a show. He's like, never forget that. It's always a show. And that used to be something that was lost on me, but having versatility helped me be more aware of what I was doing, regardless of it being done with people I know very intimately, being done solo, or being done with people I'm meeting for the first time through a podcast like this tends to be. So this is the next question I have, because I'm really interested in how people do their work and how they kind of structure their day. So when are you most productive? Like, is there a certain point in the day, like my best hours are first thing in the morning, I get up at 6, I fry some eggs and I get going and get the coffee and the whole thing. How do you plan out that day? What does that look like?
Do you mean like work or like our creative practice? Because we both have our jobs at the studio, which are, full-time jobs, and then we have different creative practices. So which do you mean?
Let's do both.
Okay. Do you want to go first, Elliot?
Sure.
I'm going first a lot.
In terms of my creative practice, I think a lot of people they take a lot of pride, and I think it's sometimes performative. They take a lot of pride in being a morning person, and they're like, I wake up and I just get going, and that's really I think it's admirable if you are that way. I'm definitely an early riser, but I am not productive in the morning. If I have a day that I'm going and I'm planning on being in the studio, it's going to be several hours of like warm up and like preparation in order to like get myself to that creative space. So I might go to the studio for a couple hours, work on something else unrelated. And then after being there for a little bit, then I'm ready. I've like gotten myself into the spirit or the mode of being in the workspace. So I really, it sometimes takes me a little bit. And I think by midday or later in the day, I'm ready to get going, and I've got everything set up and I'm ready. I'm like in the headspace. So, yeah, some people can wake up and hit it, but I need 2 or 3 cups of coffee sometimes.
And I would say I'm kind of the some people that Elliot's talking about. I'm very good at like setting a schedule and just doing it. I try to balance a couple different things in my life, like I have an athletic pursuit, so I have to keep a pretty strict schedule to fit it all in. And generally speaking, I can, put a time on the calendar and be ready for it. Although like my making practice right now is a lot of sewing clothes, which isn't nearly as creative as what Elliot's doing. So I think that what he's saying resonates with me too. Like if I feel like I'm going to develop something from scratch, I can't necessarily just make myself do it. I do think practices like having a daily sketching time or like some sort of like rumination that results in feeding your creative energy can be really useful. But yeah, I have to be pretty structured or I will just like whittle my time away on only one thing.
Yeah, I dig it. During the week, I try to block out things during the week. So I'll look at, all right, what interviews do I have? So I may have 10 to 12 interviews that I'm doing in a week with a day job. So you're doing research, a couple hours of research on the guests. And if I remember it was one interview where it's like, 5 of us are going to be on there. It's like, So, you want to have at least something like pertinent to each guest that's on there so they feel included in the conversation. And they're able to, kind of say that position. So I'll do that research and that prep during the week, usually on a Monday, that block of like from 4 to 8, maybe 4 to, no, sorry, that 4-hour block. So it might be from 8 to 12 or maybe 8 to 1. I'm prepping. And that's almost how every week goes. And if it's not done, if I haven't like come up with questions and research on the guest for, let's say, a Tuesday or the Wednesday, I feel like, okay, it's just right there lurking over my shoulder. You got something to do, right? You're behind, right? And it kind of affects the other things. So luckily, I had the time today to like prep for the rest of the week, but if I didn't have that time to prep earlier and then I had got on this interview with you all, I'd be like, I'm behind on everyone. I'm not going to be able to get it done. So that's literally how my practice kind of goes as far as the prepping piece. Do I have everything I need? And have I communicated with the guests? And kind of what we were doing earlier, Shane, of like, oh, well, let me make sure this is updated. Let me change this around and make it kind of fit what we're aiming to do. I feel like that's the completion part of it.
In terms of the BJC though, in terms of our professional work,
yep.
I 100% rely on the studio schedule, our class schedule, to be able to block out my time. Monday afternoons, right now, we have 2 classes scheduled. That means that there's no one in the studio renting. That means that I don't have to be as available to people in the studio, so I can do something that might be more, might require some more focus on my computer. Whereas other times, like Wednesday mornings, before our staff meetings, that's generally a pretty busy time, and there's no classes scheduled. So I know that I'm not going to be able to focus on, preparing for that meeting quite as much, because I know that there's going to be people in the studio that are going to need help. They're going to want advice. They're going to want to bounce ideas off of me or ask me a technical question. So yeah, I definitely structure my time around a fluctuating studio schedule, because my role is in my desk. My office is in the studio itself. So I work in and amongst students and renters. So it's kind of, it's different by the season because the schedule is not consistent. But I can count on some busy times and more relaxed times in that schedule.
Those peaks. I see the same thing where, as I was saying, you have the day job, you have like different interests that are there, and you still want to do your creative stuff. You still want to be able to balance whatever social thing you have going on, especially if you're like taking grad school, you're trying to learn something, pick up new skills. I try to measure out time to watch wrestling. That's what I do now. Everything is blocked out. But yeah, so I might work 3 days from the actual day job in the office, and the other 2 days I have a little bit more flexibility where if someone's like, I really only can get this door in the morning. All right, let's make your interview a Tuesday interview and do it in the morning to be able to capture it. And because if you're planning out stuff and going with a calendar, having Calendly has been so great recently to kind of schedule things. But beforehand, it was really me scheduling. And it's like, oh, you sure you can do this time? What about 45 minutes? Maybe 30. That'll work. And it just really wasn't conducive. So I definitely relate to what you were describing there, Elliot.
Yeah, those scheduling apps are amazing.
Yes. Better than Zoom. So let's see. I got a couple more questions here before I get to those great rapid fire questions that everyone loves. No, there's been no losses. No one's been upset. No one's walked off. I edited it out if they did. So from both of your vantage points, let's say at the BJC, are there any unique selling points to what your jobs are? Are there quote unquote perks or what have you? One of the perks for me would be able to talk to lovely folks like yourselves. But what are the perks that you all have at the BJC?
Well, an obvious one is that when I'm not on duty as the studio manager, I get to utilize a pretty well-equipped jewelry studio. So the overhead with metals equipment, what's the word I'm looking for? Like jewelry making tools and stuff like that. That the overhead on those tools are pretty high, and you have to have space for it. So I get to use that when during my time off. A perk of my job that I always talk about is the ability to be creative on the clock on my job, because I'm a resource to many people that are coming to the studio. They're asking me for my opinion on their current project, whether it's a design approach or it's a technical approach, I get to work through and talk with people about how can they accomplish that idea. And I can see that moment happen where they've like figured it out. And they're having some success and they're feeling empowered about the thing that they're making. That's the biggest perk of my job, is like giving people the creative jumpstart to like finish the thing or solve the technical problem that's been like weighing the project down. And I see that as a huge perk of my job. I also get to like melt metal at work pretty regularly. And if you've never seen that happen, it never gets old. It's always exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I would say similarly, like just being able to work in a creative space, like even if I'm, writing a grant or making a spreadsheet, which are not super fun or creative, like there's just an energy that comes from being around people who are sort of in their happy place and creating something that brings them joy. And it's easy to take for granted, but it's one thing I tried not to take for granted. Also just being able to kind of keep our pulse on like what's happening in Baltimore in the art scene, but also more broadly in the art jewelry scene. That's really fun. We do a lot of networking, and that is an enjoyable way to work most days. What else? Being immersed in art is a nice aspect of this job. And also because we're small, it can absolutely be stressful to have your hands sort of in everything and manage everything, but it's also really gratifying to have a lot of autonomy and control over the decisions that we're making. And we're not having to answer to an institution or having to do things just because there's like the status quo.
Yeah, it's legit. And that is, I think, a natural segue to my final real question, which would be describe the impact that Baltimore, more poignantly Station North, has had on your work. Like, you're in the middle of an arts district, and obviously there's the artistic component, the nonprofit component, the education component, all baked into the BJC. So tell me about that a bit.
Yeah. I mean, it's really great to be in an arts district, whatever arts district that is, but it's especially cool to be in Station North because it was the first arts district that was designated in the state of Maryland. It was designated in the early aughts, which was right around when I moved to Baltimore. So personally, it's just been really cool to see that neighborhood kind of grow and change and then now be part of it. I think there's a lot happening in that area and there's potential for so much more. It's really cool to be at the center of it all and also to have the opportunity to help other organizations and other art spaces that are kind of just getting off the ground. We are pretty close to the train station, so we're more and more bringing in folks from DC, so that's pretty nice. I think there's something throughout all of Baltimore where there's always this vying for people to come in from outside of the city. And I've always loved Central Baltimore. I think there's just a lot of energy in the area, so it's nice to capitalize on that. We are close to a couple of schools, including the Baltimore Design School. We have a partnership with them. It's great to be near Mica. We get a lot of Mica students either during their time, but often post-grad as like interns. That's kind of what's on my mind. Do you have anything to add, Elliot?
I think the only thing I would add is the Mica student connection, which we've seen more and more of recently. We had two recent interns who were Mica students, and they were in the studio quite a bit, taking classes and also working with me and my colleague Jen to make improvements in the studio. And one of them told me recently that they were like showing off something that they had made to one of their classmates, and they were like, "Where did you make that?" And we had created the perfect ambassador for the BJC. They were like, "You should come take a class at the Jewelry Center." And it's like, I think people don't think it, like you said, it's like you can't believe you're talking to a jewelry maker, but you have to start somewhere, and this is like a really accessible place to start that education. And art students definitely they have other skills in sculpture and 3D design, which are definitely they definitely apply in the jewelry studio.
And it can be a natural, I think, follow-up to a school program because there's a lot more independence and autonomy that they have in our studio, but still a lot of support. So we'll often see people kind of blossom into a new kind of maker in their space after school, which is pretty special.
So that's all of the real questions. And I say real because they're actually structured and you have them and you can prepare and all of that. Now it's time to just see how you think on your toes. I got three questions. It's back and forth. We try to get them over as quickly as possible, but these are my rapid fire. I'm thinking about calling them random fire because they're random questions. So I want to start off. How many pieces of jewelry would you say that you own? Yeah, it's a little bit of a trolley question.
I have a lot more than Elliot. Oh, God.
Oh, that is a tough question because I do a lot of trades with artists, and I would say somewhere between 60 and 80 pieces of jewelry. I mean, wow. That's a safe number for me. And they're not all like, I know you hear that, and I'm like, I must be like dripping in gold and stuff like that. But the people that I know that are making jewelry are not using gold and diamonds and stuff like that. There's a lot of other materials and like semi-precious materials and stuff like that.
You might see some of the pieces I collect and think like a kid made them. You know, it's not like contemporary jewelry is definitely not gold and diamonds. I would say I probably have about 130 would be a good guess. I recently reorganized some of it so that I can see it all. Yeah. But yeah, I collect several pieces a year, maybe many.
Now I had to really feel like I got to catch up. I was bragging earlier about becoming a ring guy. I have like 5 rings. I'm hearing like 60, 130. That's fine. Huh. All right.
I wear a really large ring size. It's like the max for the standard ring size. I wear a size 15 ring, and a lot of people don't. They usually make like between a 6 and a 9 because those are the most common ring sizes. And I've started collecting a couple of rings from people that I know. I've bought 2 recently, and I've got another one, a commission from a friend of mine who does some engraving. So that's my new thing is rings because a size 15 is big. It's a fun thing to make, and I kind of have to. And I know lots of jewelers, so I can
charge them more for it. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. There's more materials. Yeah,
it's more materials.
I mean, I have like a 9. I'm at the max, and I'm feeling like ring inferior. Thanks, Elliot. Appreciate it. I appreciate that. So here's the last 2. What is there a piece of advice you would give your younger self as it relates to your work? Like, something that you've learned over the last however many years, let's say like, 3 for you, Elliot, here, that you've learned, you're like, you know what, I wish I could have told myself this when I was younger. Maybe that would, make it a little bit easier for me.
I think I would say that relationships and connections are just like so much more impactful than so many other things that you might assume will be, like your education means a lot, but who you know and in what context and how you utilize your relationships can really help drive the rest of your career.
That is a tough question because it's always like, it's much easier to know. It's easy to say how you would do something differently. And I always think like, I wish I had focused more on learning one type of skill or this thing over that thing. But I mean, I hate to just jump on what Shane said, but like use your network. Because of where I went to school and because of who I know, I have a pretty wide network. And I use it more now because I know that I have to. But that is such an important skill to the people that are going to help you out the most are the ones that know you. They're going to be able to help you and give you advice, and use your network.
Okay, here's the last one. This one I thought was funny because I thought of like juggling earlier. What would you say the most useless talent you have is? It's like something you do very well, but it's like, this isn't practical. This isn't practical at all.
No, I don't know.
I can't juggle.
I do many things very well. I really like diagramming sentences, Nobody wants to hear about that.
Love to hear it. I can be a large hand model is what I'm
Yeah,
thinking.
I mean, I'm moving right now. I can pack the trunk of a car better than anybody. I
Yeah,
swear.
Elliot's very good with like spatial reasoning and like,
Which I guess is pretty useful, but
Yes,
like,
yes.
but it's
I
not
don't
usually on a job description, right? Like,
no, no,
True.
yeah.
It's like you need help with your stock room. I got you. It's like this. You're an
Yeah.
accountant. Like, what are you? You're like, what are you saying? So, thank you both for coming on to the podcast and sharing with me. And I want to invite you to share anything that you feel like we didn't touch on briefly in this podcast, and plug away website and all of that good stuff to have the fine folks check your stuff out and get into a workshop and all.
Yeah, I would say that. And also our gallery space, it's like super accessible. Just drop by for 5 or 10 minutes and see what we're doing. We're open 7 days a week and we love visitors.
Yeah, we have an open door policy that there's no need to make an appointment or anything to come and see the show in the gallery. You can see anything that we have going on, whether it's in the classroom or the gallery or, a free program that we might be offering. That's all online at baltimorejewerycenter.org. I think you can follow us on Instagram. It's Baltimore Jewelry Center. Those are the plugs.
Hey, there you have it, folks. I want to again thank Shane, thank Elliot for coming on to the podcast. And I am Rob Lee saying that there's art in and around your city. You just got to look for it.